Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's event. Hopefully, you can all hear me. If not, please do put in the chat. So, tonight we're going to talk about the first 100 days, what nobody tells you about post go live. So, hopefully, 60 minutes. Apologies for being slightly late, a few technical hitches. We're going to look at things like the demobilization trap, the ticket avalanche, the workarounds that become permanent, the super user burnout, and what a good transition from program to BAU could and should look like. Okay, so let's get started. So, three things to take away from the next 60 minutes. An honest conversation about the phase of ERP transformation that nobody really puts in a business case. So, why Hypercare fails by design, the four quiet failures nobody talks about, and what a good transition to BAU could and should look like. So, Hypercare is the most overpromised, under-resourced phase of any ERP program, and it's predictable. The default outcome is often not always good and can be bad. Good outcomes have to be deliberately constructed or planned. There are four quiet failures. Workarounds become permanent. Super users burn out because they've got a day job and looking after the new system. We become over-reliant on SIs, that's the system integrator or your implementation partner. The deferred defects backlog you inherit on day one, all sitting underneath an adoption gap your dashboard can't see. And what does a good transition to BAU look like? So there's 5 interventions: the cost reality, the cheaper version, your own people on payroll bolstering Hypercare, plus AI-driven test automation to help you handle quarterly release cycles. So let's talk about the demobilization trap. Why does the team that built the system walk out the door the moment the business needs them most? Let's have a look at that, shall we? So there's 3 things for anyone who's going to go live in the next 12 months and who's already gone live and probably wants to learn some lessons from that. You need to buy retained capacity between 9 and 12 months. It does sound a lot, but we're going to talk about the costs and the reality of that further in the slides. It's not a standard day hypercare, which is what most people or most companies use or adopt. 90 days is just a number, but it actually should be based on criteria. Things like if you're doing finance, month end, quarter end, year end. You need to build it into your implementation partner's contract before signature so that you can lock in the costs. So you don't have to end up paying more later. So that's one. The second thing is you need to ring fence your top 15 super users or your top super users. Identify them by name during the build implementation phase. Put them on protected time for 12 months post go live to make sure they're not juggling their day job and a new system. Without that, they'll get pulled back and then they'll be struggling to cope with both. So you need to keep them ring fenced for hypercare period. And then you need to keep your independent assurance partner through hypercare exit. It's the cheapest thing in the program. It's the person whose job is to flag what's about to go wrong. They'll identify it and they'll help prevent it happen. So program assurance and BAU readiness are different questions. Most clients only ask the first, and it's roughly only 1 to 2% of a program cost anyway, which is, in the scheme of things, peanuts. So go live is the single most expensive knowledge transfer your organization will ever do. Okay, shall we move on? The next topic is hypercare reality. So what does the hypercare ticket curve actually look like? And why does the SI's SLA report often not really resemble what the business experience? So if we go into that a little bit more, the shape nobody wants to draw in the business case, there are 4 phases. The metric the SI is measured against has almost no correlation with what the business actually experiences. So between days 1 and 7, it looks suspiciously low. People think, oh, this was great. What a wonderful implementation. There's not much wrong. That's because the business hasn't really started using the system at scale. Period end hasn't run, payroll hasn't run, procurement hasn't really tried to raise a PO under real pressure. Then between days 8 and 21, as people start to get into the system, volumes slowly start to creep up. Most aren't defects. A lot of the questions are, I don't know how to do this. User questions. The new support team escalates most of them to the SI, eating hypercare hours budgeted for actual defects. Now, some of this can be addressed by internally based tools like AI tools like OGL, which is Oracle Guided Learning, or equivalent in other products, which actually teaches the user how to do it themselves. But again, that takes a level of adoption. So then you come to the first month end, which is day 22 to 45. Real defects start to surface, reconciliations start to break, reports don't tie up. The chart of accounts mapping has an edge case nobody really thought about or even tested, and 300 journals on day 1, 500 by day 3. Finance does it in 12 hours what it used to do in 4. All of a sudden the picture looks a little bit different. And then you get to the second month end, support team is drowning, the SI approaches the contractual end of Hypercare, conversations might start about extending starts, and rates jump by 1.5 to 2 times the rate that you originally paid during the implementation. The Section 151 officer is asked to approve unbudgeted spend, mid-year end run with audit looking on, thinking, what's happened here? The hidden costs. Workarounds. Now these are often put in place to get live. Burnout, dependency on the implementation partner, 3 costs nobody puts in the business case, and all 3 tend to be visible by day 90 if you know where to look. So workarounds, burnout, dependencies. Each one is invisible through program governance. All 3 compound the effects of the solution. By the time they're visible at board level, the cost of fixing them has multiplied tenfold. So as I said, every workaround that exists at day 90 will still exist at day 900. The moment a workaround works, the pressure to fix them disappears, evaporates, people forget about them. The defect drops down the backlog, 12 months later the workaround is institutional. Nobody bothers to pick it up and fix it. You need to track them. You need to keep them in a log, ideally in an online tool like Jira or Azure DevOps, so at least it doesn't get lost, and the business should definitely pick it up again. You need to set a sunset date on every one and escalate to Steerco at 6 months, because workarounds add the workload on what should be a mostly automated solution. Super user burnout. By the day 60, they're exhausted. By day 120, half of 6 are looking elsewhere. Colleagues stop calling the help desk and start calling them. Their inbox doubles. Day job, tickets, plus training, plus unofficial escalation points. People look for the shortest route or shortcut to get their questions answered. Organizations don't notice until one of them resigns, or there's a big blow up and the SI charges $1,400 a day to send somebody who knows half as much. And then you get into the realms of SI dependency. Pre-go live, the client is the buyer. Post-go live, the client is the dependent. The SI sets the rate. New reports, configuration changes, new entities, workflows tweaked. Those used to be in-house tasks. Now each change is a change request, which costs you more. Your IT team becomes a procurement function for SI services. Design against this deliberately, or pay premium day rates for 5 years or for things you used to do for free. Then we get to the adoption gap. So your dashboard says 98% adoption. Your business is at 60%. The gap between those two numbers is what your governance can't see, and that's what hardens by around day 90. So real adoption is a different question to login adoption. So it's not about whether people logged in, whether they're doing their work in the system or next to it. Whatever the level the curve hits by day 90 is what you'll have for the next 2 years. So the shape of the curve, adoption isn't linear. Weeks 1 to 2 is artificially high, people are curious, training is fresh, support is fully staffed. By week 4 it drops, first real friction, workflows that take 7 clicks where the old one took 2, reports the new system doesn't produce. People get frustrated. Week 8, recovery or collapse to permanent flaw. Why the functions diverge. So finance and payroll are forcing events, month end and pay run. The work has to happen in the system. HR recruitment, learning and development, performance, no hard forcing event. Spreadsheets and shadow systems suddenly start to appear and become the norm. 12 months in, the 3 million system runs 30% of cases, the rest lives in a SharePoint list maintained by an EA. So there's 3 things to try and do to try and remove this or try to avoid this scenario. Measure adoption from day 1 with metrics that mean something. So active users in the last 7 days, how many transactions per FTE per week, percentage of payments processed through the new tool versus everything else. Post that weekly, visible to Steerco and senior leadership, so people can see actually how many people are using this expensive system we just implemented. Sunset the legacy system on a published date. Turn it off. Don't allow people to go back to the old ways and old days. Not when everyone's ready. It's switch it off as soon as you cut over to the new solution. Adoption never recovers as long as people can fall back. The legacy SharePoint, the spreadsheet, etc. All of them have to go. And you need to make adoption a leadership KPI, key performance indicator. The director of finance is accountable for finance adoption, the director of HR for HR, and the head of procurement or director of procurement commissioning for procurement and POs. Not the program team, not the SI, they're demobilizing. It's the business. The people who own the function are the business, not IT. And then when you move to a modern platform, you have quarterly releases. So they're regular as clockwork, they come every quarter, and you don't have much time to test them. So the vendor pushes mandatory updates every 13 weeks. Most of the time the testing is done manually. That takes out SMEs, so that's 4 to 6 weeks of testing per release, 4 releases a year, roughly 15 FTEs, anything between 400 and 800k a year to test it. So what lands first, the second month end or the first quarterly release? So we're promoting Testify. No, not going to hide that. Testify is an AI-powered no-code test automation, purpose-built for Oracle Fusion. It's built by Sim Consulting on an NLP, natural language processing platform, AI platform for Oracle Fusion Cloud. It can lower your testing costs by 50 to 70% versus traditional script-based automation. It turns weeks to days, so you can have release cycle compression. And given you only have 2 weeks to do these tests, this is a huge advantage. And then it's also audit ready, so you have evidence and sign off. It tells you what worked and what didn't. And also you can rerun it as many times as you want. So it focuses on the regression side. You also have the progression side, which means the business only focuses on the new things. But that also gets fed back into the automated regression pack. So Testify has been delivered at a client site where a previous incumbent took 12 months and failed. We've managed to get up and running, and we've got 80% automated coverage. So what does good look like? So you've got 5 interventions: the cost reality and the cheaper version. Your own people on payroll bolstering Hypercare instead of paying SI day rates for the next 3 years. So there's 5 things designed from the start, not bolted on afterwards. None of this is a mystery. When we talk about it, it probably will be logical. The patterns are well documented and the interventions are practical. They don't just happen by default. So Hypercare is actually 12 months, not 3. And that's because businesses want to save on money and budgets. So you need to renegotiate that, or you need to put it in the business case from the outset, so you lock in rates. And you've got a resource profile that supports a proper 12 months Hypercare, which also enables proper adoption. So that's roughly 8 to 12% of program cost. If it isn't there, the business case is wrong. Number 2, support team in place 6 months early. Now, why is this important? You don't want to be handing over to them just before go live. That's too late. They need to sit during implementation as part of the implementation team. They need to observe the design authority. They need to be part of UAT. They need to write the support runbooks during the build. They need to learn the system while the people who built it are still around, so they can ask all the questions in the world, and they can work with the business to understand how they will work together. Then you need to have a written SI exit plan, signed off, a document, knowledge transfer plan, defect backlog that goes into live, that's agreed with the business and support, retained services scope, in-house capabilities the client must hold. Until those are in place, the SI doesn't exit, and the cost of staying sits with them. Independent assurance of Hypercare exit. So not the SI assessing themselves. You need an independent layer or a partner whose job is to test whether the BAU is ready. A different question from whether the program has formally closed. So they can provide the key metrics to say this is how ready the business are, this is how ready support is, this is how many defects, these are the ones that are the critical ones that need to be fixed before anybody exits Hypercare. Or that's often called criteria. That criteria must be nailed down before go live, and everybody agrees to it, signs to it, and exits from it. And the metrics shift from program to BAU. Program metrics retire. BAU metrics come on. Adoption, time to resolve, workaround count, super user retention, SI ticket volume, still on program metrics 6 months in. Governance hasn't caught up. So governance is key here as well. So 5 to 10% of program cost, or pay 3 times for the same outcome. So the cheaper version is your own people on payroll bolstering Hypercare, plus AI-driven automation absorbing the quarterly release. Or you buy capability once, not consultancy quarterly. In terms of numbers, cost of doing it well, you have a 12-month SI Hypercare at premium, and that's going to cost you anywhere between 1.5 and 4 million. Support team 6 months early, between 20 to 40 FTEs. It just goes in the program P&L. And independent assurance or exit is between 200 to 500k. So these are weekly adoption dashboard analysts, which is an embedded role. So total uplift of the program costs becomes 5 to 10%. But if it's baked in at the start, everybody knows what to expect, and it's not a surprise cost later on when you find that once you've gone live, Hypercare is not as smooth or as accurate as you thought. This then takes care of all the issues that come afterwards. Or, on the other hand, you could go for the cheaper version, client-side bolster, own people, retained for 12 months, embedded super users, 2 per function. They sit in support pods for 90 days. Help desk learns from them in real time. By day 90, hopefully, help desk handles 80% independently. Client-side build retention pool, 3 to 5, functional design leads, lead testers, DA members on a program rates, not SI rates, institutional memory in the room. And then you've got client-side trainer, cater, 2 to 3, top-up joiner, refresher training the SI delivered 6 months pre-go live has decayed. People don't remember. They need a refresher. So ongoing training is what happens, which stops adoption from collapsing. 12 to 15 FTEs over 12 months, 600k to 12.2 million versus the 3 to 7 million the SI way. Either way, both should be planned in to some degree to make sure that Hypercare is smooth and that the adoption rate increases and that it can move to BAU in a much smoother fashion. Okay, so what if the SI refuses to extend Hypercare or wants to charge premium rates? Well, it's not a contracting problem or a Hypercare problem. You need to fix it before the SI signs a contract. You need to build it into the SI contract. So it's tiered post-go life support, it's fixed price, you've got it locked in, you know what you're paying for. If you pass that point, your leverage is the reference, the SI wants the case study, the testimonial, the next bid. Use that to get a good price. The post-go life favors when the SI most needs the relationship to look good. And walk away from the premium uplift. Build a cheaper version because it will cost you more if the SIs are wanting to negotiate. Build a cheaper version in-house with independent assurance. The 12-month SI Hypercare is the most expensive line. Trim it to what's left. How can you stop user burnout or super user burnout? Well, you can protect their time formally. A memo from the SRO or their senior management to make sure that they maintain presence in the program during the hypercare period. And you need to name those people to make sure that they stick around. And the percentage of their time, if not all of their time, is ring-fenced to hypercare. It's not about goodwill, it's about written allocation. You should recognize them organizationally, even with or without, ideally with a bonus, but even without. So most public sector organizations can't pay a retention bonus. They can do an acting up allowance, additional responsibility allowance, or a development opportunity. All 3 count, all 3 make SMEs and super users feel good. And then you need to build a peer group, a super user community across functions, meeting weekly. Burnout in isolation is far worse than burnout with peers. At least they can support each other. The community itself becomes a knowledge transfer mechanism. They learn from each other. Birmingham, some of you may have heard what happened here. What would you have done differently? I'm not going to second guess specifics. The structural lesson is the workforce and contracting decisions made 18 months before go live. The audit report is there for everybody to read. So it was the workforce, not technical. The intervention isn't technical. Postmortems are public. The structural pattern is that people who could close the gap weren't retained, and that decision was made well before go live. Contract shaped failure. The gap between go live and the support team being able to operate the system independently was too long. Standard hypercare, 3 months or 90 days, was always going to be insufficient at that scale. Independent challenge earlier. The bigger pattern across Birmingham class failures is the absence of independent oversight at the right governance level at the right time. By the time the issue surfaces at member level, it's already too late and it's expensive to fix. How do you actually measure adoption beyond logins? Well, there's 3 numbers by function on one page every Monday. You can do active users in the last 7 days. So as a percentage of licensed users, tells you who's actually showing up, who's using it, versus who has a license sitting unused. The simplest signal of real engagement. Transactions per FTE per week. So by function, it tells you whether they're doing the real work in the system or just visiting it. The leading indicator that diverges from logins by week 4, and then point 3, percentage of function output in the new tool. For finance, percentage of journals, procurement, percentage of POs, HR, percentage of cases, below target 3 weeks running, steer core agenda. Put it on the agenda, talk about it, what's happening, why isn't the system being used, where's the adoption. You don't need a sophisticated platform, you need the discipline to look at it. And then what if we genuinely can't get an extra 8 to 10% in the business case? That can happen, and I can see why that would happen. People don't think about those things up front. The priority order, if the budget is fixed, is fund the 3 cheap interventions in full. Trim SI Hypercare to what's left. First, client-side retention pool, so 3 to 5 people from the program team as a minimum kept on. Highest value spend on the list. They're already there, they're trained, they're paid for. You're fighting for the marginal cost of contract extension, not a new hire. Second, embed super users already on the payroll. You're just keeping them in the role for 90 days instead of releasing them to BAU. Almost free if the SRO will protect their time. Third, independent assurance scaled. For a 40-50 million pound program, 200k of independent eyes through the hypercare exit is a rounding error. It's peanuts. 150 million program, 400k, cheap insurance against a 20 million failure scenario.
Ramzan, we have a question from LinkedIn from Mohammed. How do you measure commercial uplift after an ERP go live compared to BAU? And how often do organisations actually see a financial gain beyond operational efficiency?
So a commercial uplift, I'm assuming they mean efficiencies or benefits or return on investment. I'm assuming that's what they mean. I think that depends upon the level of adoption. It can take up to 5 years, and that all comes down to the level of adoption on the client side. For example, in modern platforms, there are many new features, AI features that are available, and if they're turned on, for example, you can automate your invoice detection, which used to have maybe a few people doing it. In the new world, you don't need anybody. It all comes down to how efficient or how much adoption the users want to take and how much they want to turn on. And I think that all depends upon what they've implemented, but I would say it could be as quick as 24 months, but it could be as long as 5 years. It all depends upon how much adoption has taken place. There are 3 things to take away. Go live is not the finish line. It's just the start of the hardest phase. If your program governance treats it as at the end, as it's the end, you have a problem. The default outcome will be bad. Good outcomes have to be deliberately planned. The demobilization trap: plan for your hypercare, plan for the people, plan your SMEs or your super users, and cost it up front. don't do it at the end because it will cost you more. And doing it well is cheaper. So 5 to 10% of program cost up front beats double-digit cost later. So two things make it easy. Your own people on payroll, bolstering hypercare and AI-driven efficiencies, including automation where you can, absorbing quarterly releases. Buy capability once, not consultancy quarterly. I think in next month we'll do another session, same time, same place, different conversation. I'm hoping to talk about three in a box. It's when government gets it right and why most programs don't. And there is some research done into this as to which models work well, which models don't work, and there's lots of logic and research behind all of it. So the structural difference between the three in a box and the traditional client SI governance, where it works and where it doesn't, practical design, who sits where, what each role owns, and what's escalated to the program board. Before we go, there are 15 questions, 5 minutes. You can score your own governance profile, and it's delivered immediately to you. So what you'll receive is your governance scored across 5 dimensions. What's your weakest area? A specific recommended next step, personalized to your role and ERP status. Results in your box immediately. No waiting, no sales call. Feel free to scan the QR code and go through the questions. And finally, I'd like to say thanks for everyone who attended. And also, I'd like to shout out to Kate and Bella who helped make this happen. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.